And our esteemed panelist will be Professor Vidyanand, the Professor of IIM-Calcutta, Professor J.P. Sharma, Director, IMS Ghaziabad, Professor D.K. Agrawal, Dean, COBMEC Mody University, Dr. Rajanish Das, President of Catalyst, Constellations, Mr. Arpit Chadha, Vice Chairman, I.T.S, the Education Group, Mr. Braj Kishore Gupta, the President of Giant Step, and Mr. Arvind Passey, Editor, the Education Post. So may I request the moderator and all the panelist members to be on the dais, please, for the discussion. So welcome all the panelists. So after demonetization, plastic money is talk of the country today, and our experts will be talking about it. Welcome you all. Let's begin the discussion. So acceptance of virtual and plastic money. Does it need a healthy mix of management techniques and formal education? All the panelists along with the moderator are here. Please.
We are starting our technical session dot on time, and we have time until 2:30, which means we have about 1 hour and 40 minutes at our disposal. And we have 6 panel members with us on the dais. I would quickly like to name them. Professor Vidyanand, who is a professor at IIM-Calcutta, actually. Professor J.P. Sharma is the director IMS Ghaziabad. Professor D.K. Agrawal, who is the dean at Mody University, Lakshmangarh. Dr. Rajanish Das is the president of Catalyst Constellations. We have Mr. Arpit Chadha, vice chairman, I.T.S, the education group. We have Mr. Braj Kishore Gupta, who is president of Giant Step. We also have Mr. Arvind Passey, the editor of the Education Post. And the theme that has been given to us, which we will be discussing now, is acceptance of virtual and plastic money. Does it need a healthy mix of management technique and formal education? Now, this topic is really very contemporary. The phase is still on, at least until 30th of December. What will happen later on, we don't know, but until 30th of December, things are at a high pace in terms of what is required to be done. And we have very learned and eminent panelists who will be sharing their thoughts on this. Now, before what I would want is that each one of you can speak for about 5-6 minutes each, and then we can open it up I can ask you a question, and then we'll see how it goes. So by turn, we'll start in the sequence that I have listed, with just about 5-6 minutes each on this. Now, before I hand over the session to Professor Vidyanand, who is first on my list, some of my quick thoughts on this particular topic. In the last session, it was being said that it's a new thing and people have some kind of fear and things like that. That's the human nature. We have been taught as a student of management that human beings always resist change. If there is a change, nobody wants to do that change unless they are forced to do a change. No argument, no reasoning works here, because people have got used to a certain way of doing things, and that's how they are. So therefore, change will not happen on its own. If it does happen on its own, it takes what is called organic time. It takes time, and it will be very long before a tangible benefit is visible. So change has to happen. In this case, Mr. Passey gave the example of eagle and eaglet kind of thing. Somebody has to push that you do this. So therefore, people have no choice but for survival, open their wings and do things. This is a very good example. And so I think we are into same kind of a situation here, where not on the official perspective, but informally people are talking that the government is deliberately not releasing 500 rupee notes, so that you do have 2000 rupee note, but it is worthless. So you can't go to a shop and give 2000 rupees and ask for a change after doing a shopping for 100 rupees, which was possible if Earlier, with a 1,000 rupee note, you could go to a pawn shop and buy a pack of cigarette or something, or a few pans, and this guy would be happy to give you change after 1,000 rupees. Today, 2,000 rupees is worthless from that perspective. So 500 rupee note is deliberately not being released so that people have this feeling that I do have money, but I can't do transactions. So therefore, the government is forcing everybody that you go to other modes of transaction, which is e-cash, debit card, credit card, or whatever, many options that is available. So this is a good thing. I'm sure things should shape up well. One or two things that I would like to share here is whenever new things come, people have this kind of a reservations. I read an article which said that well, the plastic money or the e-cash which is being promoted by the government is having huge amounts of security concerns. It can be easily hacked. There are videos which are in circulation. There are conferences being held as to how easy it is to hack somebody's account. And there was a guy who was using a Paytm clip showing that because Paytm doesn't ask for a PIN at the point of transaction. So if your phone is unlocked, somebody can actually borrow your friend's phone and make a payment. So these are the concerns that are being raised. Somebody wrote a piece of article in popular newspaper saying that forget these kinds of social hacking. This is social hacking. You borrow a phone and then you do it. This is social hacking. The technical hacking can happen very easily, wherein you actually get the password of these guys, and those kinds of technical hacking may happen. So therefore you have to be careful and you have to be wary. You might have heard of the Axis Bank and ICICI Bank's credit card information that was leaked, I think, about a year back. So the banks released some warning that you be careful and check your accounts. Email accounts getting hacked. So when you have the passwords and the other relevant e-transaction details getting hacked, you have a problem. So when I was discussing this with someone, I said, look, when you have money in your pocket, okay, you don't think that it is very safe. Somebody can still take your money. Right? A pickpocket can take your money, you can leave your purse, you can drop your purse. So there are umpteen ways that you lose whatever resource you have if you are not careful. So you have to be careful, and the care comes with time. You are okay until something bad happens, then you become more cautious. For example, I remember as a child, in I think it is 67, 68, I was grade 5, grade 6. My father brought in a pressure cooker and a cylinder, gas cylinder, in my home. And we had relatives dropping into our house, telling my mom, particularly ladies, that this pressure cooker is so dangerous that if you don't look into this properly, it can explode like a bomb. And the first casualty would be the woman who is in the kitchen. So pressure cookers are really very dangerous. You shouldn't use it. Now on a hindsight, you know how comfortable it is to use a pressure cooker. And the worst was the gas cylinder in our home. So, the guys who had a little technical knowledge, they would say, do you know how much pressure is there if the flame goes inside and this could explode? Not only you, your house, but the neighbor's house would also, get blasted. So, please don't use this. And that was the concern which was being raised at that point of time. Today you may sneer and laugh that, what is this concern? So similar is the concern today as far as the e-cash is concerned. We need to be aware of how do we use it more responsibly, how do we use it more carefully, and then therefore benefits are for us to enjoy. Without the cooking gas cylinder those days, the smokes would have created a lot of health issues. Without the pressure cooker, maybe our eating would have not been as comfortable as they are today. So times have changed, and you can link that to the e-cash syndrome which is kicking in today. Half the population says bad thing, half the population saying it's okay, right? So now we have eminent panelists with us. I would request them to share their views for about 5 to 6 minutes, and then we'll have open to the house Q&A. In the meanwhile, after they have done, if something comes to my mind, I might also like to ask the question. So I'll have a first call on the question if it comes to my mind, right? Thank you very much. Now may I invite Professor Vidyanand Jha.
So very good afternoon, and it's a rather challenging thing because professors are not used to speaking for a very short time. We're programmed to, you start to speak for 1.5 hours. So last time I did well. Let's see how I do this time.
I'm here. Don't worry.
So firstly, let me just say this, that there are two kind of views which I would like to bring to this. One is, of course, as a citizen. Second is as a professor of change management, because that is what I have studied all my life. I'm no economist, so I try to educate myself what is the benefit of plastic money or virtual cash. What I'm told the benefit is that money circulation would increase many-fold and so on, so economy should kind of, in a sense, grow at a much faster rate. On the other side, there are also concerns that this is a kind of, continuing with the neoliberal policies of the state, that all the transaction cost is being now pushed on to the users, because Paytm or whatever, it's not without any transaction cost, and that transaction cost in the short run, you can see the finance minister has announced that it would be in some ways borne by the state, but we don't know who will bear it. Notes, currency notes, actually the transaction cost was being borne by the state in some ways. Second, more important thing to me, and let me, I just seek indulgence of Professor Das. So in terms of change, actually, if you look at it, there are two broad ways to change. One is that you change people's behavior and then their attitude changes. Second is that you change people's attitude and then the behavior changes. What he was earlier mentioning, that you push things and so on and so forth, that is more like change which is brought by behavior change, and there are successful examples. So Kemal Atatürk, brought very momentous changes in Turkey. He changed the way people dressed, they wrote their names, the way they wrote their script actually. So he changed from Arabic script to actually Roman script and so on. So all this was a state decree and it happened. So it can happen. But in general, looking at the whole world, what change management people believe is that if you bring about change through behavioral change, which is by scaring people, coercion and so on, it can not be very long lasting. And that is where this whole idea that though education and communication, try to change people's attitudes, that takes more time, it will actually be more permanent. Let me just talk about two initiatives which this government has taken, current government, why am I saying last government? So I hope this is not a prophecy, but whatever. One initiative which I was very kicked about, and we all see the need for it, is Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Now look at Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, look at this whole virtual cash kind of business. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, apart from the in a sense hoardings which you see around, first year which you saw photo opportunities for ministers and bureaucrats and so on, I don't see much happening on the ground even now. Last night I walked up to Dona Paula jetty. I could tell you that in a tourist state like Goa, which must be earning good amount from tourists, and you can't say that the state does not have resources. You don't see actually Swachh Bharat Abhiyan taking up, so to say. Now similar kind of thing I suspect awaits all the top driven changes. A great idea which may not find acceptance at a larger level. And you see, this whole demonetization debate, one issue was very critical about the change of note itself, that secrecy is required because, because of obvious reasons you don't want to publicize it. Granted. But same secrecy may not be required for actually virtual cash or, actually plastic money. To my mind, it requires therefore a very sustained engagement. Because I'll give you an example. If you have seen an Uber ad, which was just 2 months back, this ad was, there was an old guy, somewhere in 60s, and it says that you can actually hire an Uber by paying by credit card or by paying by cash. So there is a large demographic group out there who are not used to this, and no matter what you do, unless and I had made a suggestion that maybe all the RSS sakhas in the country should actually start educating people and training them into use of plastic money or something. Now I had said partly in jest, but partly actually that kind of mass movement is required to train large number of people. Second, of course, is banking penetration or internet penetration, both. In fact, if you look at smartphone, in a sense, ownership data, that itself should tell you that whole lot of work needs to be done on that end. Then only this can be a successful thing. So as an initial remark, sir, this should do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a good initial remark. Now may we have Mr. JP, Professor JP Sharma?
Thank you, organizers, giving me the opportunity to share my views, thoughts on a subject which is not my area. There are different angles looking into this problem. One is the demonetization. If you go into the history, you will notice, you will find, in 1946 by the Britishers, it was introduced. In 1978 by the Janata government, and in this year by our present government. There are certain similarities. There were long queues in 46, so was also in 78, and so is now. There were very common deaths by heart attack and others in 1946, or also in 78, and so is now. But the reason which I see many problems this time, why not there were in 1978 or in 46, is the public was allowed to withdraw their own money. The issues there were exchange of money, while there was no limit to withdraw their own money. I think that was the reason that not many problems were faced during that time, which we are facing now. Now, not going into those details because there is a time limit. If you go into the history, this paper money or plastic money. Paper money, it was in before, it was in over 100 years before the BC. It was introduced in the form of leather. In 7th century by China, it was replaced by paper. Sorry, it was introduced in leather and then in metal, and then by China in paper, and now is the time of plastic money. If you go into the history and if you compare, whether it is leather, why it was replaced by paper, there were certain benefits. Why paper had been introduced, replaced by plastic, there are many benefits which everybody knows about it. Very easy, it's safer, many other reasons. And why there is a crisis? Why this government is, determined? I think there is a point. I see a point, why this government is for digitalization? Why this government is for e-governance, electronic governance? Why this government is for demonetization? There are many reasons. E-governance, government has taken many initiatives. So also, in digitalization, government has taken many initiatives, and as per the plans, there is a move, there is a plan to connect over 600 districts in the country, over 2.5 lakhs villages in the country, and by spending over 1 lakh crores rupees on that, the government has a plan, and it is for the betterment of the public. And so is this move. This move, maybe temporarily there may be certain problems, but if you see the long run, which maybe other panelists, eminent people may disagree, but I don't carry any agenda of I don't belong to any party. I don't have any pro or against views against any party. But then I see, the future where in India There are number of studies where it has been, and even we know that largest portion of our public is illiterate. It is not only, it is said by UNESCO that the largest portion of the public in India is illiterate. But there, yes, government has introduced. What about that portion of the public? It is that is a greater challenge. How to? Like I see, my driver, he was not able to draw money for the last 20 days. Reason being, he does not know how to sign. And see the position of those 60% or 40% or 50% people in the country. We belong to a country where more than 50% is illiterate. Now, if you see from their angle, I think there is a greater challenge before the government and before us, how to, convert their mindset from the paper money to the plastic money. And if the government is successful, which I assume, then you will see this country a totally different kind of country after some time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very actually enlightening. You said this is not your domain, but I think you were quite focused on the domain, which is does this e-cash or the plastic money transaction require formal education? So that's the point that you raised. It's really important.
Because my I.T.S corporate laws, I.T.S corporate governance, I.T.S labor laws and others, I'm totally, I was surprised to see my name in the panel. But then as a layman, because I read like you read the literature or newspaper.
So that was very valuable. We'll come back to that a little later. Now may we have Professor Agrawal for 5-6 minutes, please.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Looking at this virtual and plastic money and demonetization or these things, I have my own way of looking at all these things. If you look at the population globally, the most important thing when we are talking about the virtual or plastic money is the adaptability of the technology. And when we look at the adaptability of the technology among the people, citizens all across the world, we divide them into 3 broad categories: Generation X, Generation Y, and Generation Z. And this division is solely based on adaptability of the technology. Generation X people are those who born before 1980. Generation Y, 1980 to 2000, before 2000, and Generation Z is 2000 plus. And you can very well identify, if on the basis of your experiences with your family members, those who born before 1980, the adaptability of the technology is very slow, or they are rigid towards the adapting the technology. 80s and 90s, people born between this period, they are in the range of say 17 years to 35, 36 years. The major e-commerce transaction all across the world is being done by this age group, and more particularly in India. And the technology that those who born after 2000, they are more advanced in adaptation of the technology. I can give you one example. My son who born in year 2000, he is fond of iPad, he is fond of MacBook, he is fond of iPhone. And all these gadgets I have, and I learn a lot of things from him. When I am in trouble, I ask him, and within 2 minutes he finds out the solution. That is the adaptability of the technology. And the Mody government, while taking this decision, they have taken into consideration the demographic dividend. And that is one of the reasons why they have tried to opt for it. But when you're looking at entire scenario, I can put it in this way, that one is the proactive adaptation of this. So you will find that Generation Y people. When we are talking about the forced adaptation will be very slow. then what will happen? If I am not comfortable, I will ask my son to do that. But again, I will have a lot of things in my mind, apprehension, cognitive dissonance in my mind. Then third will be the lower rigidity, and the fourth one will be the high rigidity. And again, all these things can be put in this way that the three major things one is required to take into consideration. Number one, convenience, but the convenience cannot come free of cost. Always you have to pay. Presently, government is giving some incentives because there is a lot of criticism by the opposition parties. To neutralize that, they have given some incentives for the time being. But mind it, it is not going to come free of cost. So the cost factor will be there. The second thing is, so first is the convenience. So convenience at a cost. And the most important thing, which is called as the cognitive dissonance. I am not going to detail the infrastructure bottlenecks, all these things, cyber crime, all these things over the period, because it will take years together. Last 5 years, Government of India has not been able to appoint a judge to look after the cyber tribunal. So that is one. If any fraud will be there, you are not able to find out any platform where the issue will be addressed. That I'm not talking about that thing. But the issue is, one is required to be a trade-off between the convenience, cost, and the cognitive dissonance, doubts which the people have in their mind. This much I wanted to say. So it will be too early to say what will be the fate of or the future of this virtual and plastic money. Thank you very much.
Into giant step.
Thank you, organizers, for giving me the privilege to express my considered views. Let me begin by asking all the dignitaries in the hall, ever since demonetization came into effect, is there anyone who has not faced the music? Is there anyone who has not suffered in one way or the other? Some have not suffered. How many of you are aware that India, even today, remains a country of village? Many of the distinguished panelists were talking about the need for innovation, but I would like to have a holistic view, and I would love to say, बहुत मुश्किल सफ़र है ज़िंदगी का, बहुत मुश्किल सफ़र है ज़िंदगी का, इलाही रास्ता आसान कर दे, उनके भाग्य में भी भर दे उजाले, उनके भाग्य में भी भर दे उजाले, अंधेरों को ज़रा हैरान कर दे, अंधेरों को ज़रा हैरान कर दे. This is for those who have been standing in the queue. You and I can afford to use credit card, my friends. You and I can afford to have a different or alternative mode of having cash. But what about the majority? That has been the bane of this country, my friend. We have to think of the majority unless and until our system is focused on bringing about the masses into the mainstream. Will India grow into a major economy is my question.
Sir, I have one question.
I would love to have your question. I would love to have your question.
Please, 1 second. No, we have to follow our system. We'll have the questions afterwards. Please do your part, and then we'll take questions later.
Now, let's see the topic. The topic has 3 aspects. It begins with acceptance of virtual reality or the plastic money, which is virtual. That is part 1. Part 2 is very, very relevant, which somehow we have not deliberated upon up till now, and that is, does it need a healthy mix of management techniques and formal education? We have not yet talked about this. This is where we have to be focused on rather than getting carried away, either in favor or against the decision. As my friend rightly said, everything has to have 2 sides. There cannot be a debate on the negative ramifications of the policy or a decision. But we as a nation have got to see the positives. As our Honorable Prime Minister rightly said, short-term pain and long-term gain. That is where our focus has to be. And I am here, friends, reminded of the Shakespearean lines, full fathom fight thy father lies, of his bones are coral met. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. That is to say, my friends, change is inevitable. There is nothing we can do. Professor Das has been saying we always resist change. And we resist change despite knowing the positive aspects of change. That is the paradox. But what Shakespeare 500 years ago rightly highlighted, that every change is for something better. So that is where I would like our focus has to be. The second part, does it really need a healthy blend or not? I feel formal education is not going to help much, because education system in India itself deserves a rethink. The way it has been collapsing, the way it has been failing in producing the students of substance, I think for creating awareness among the people, which is of paramount importance, there cannot be any two opinion on that. We have got to create awareness, but how do we create awareness? I feel we should go for informal ways. It could be nukkad natak, it could be going from institution to institution, not necessarily by the academicians, not necessarily by the experts. The reason being, we live in an age of obsolescence. Dr. Agrawal was talking about technology, avalanche of technology. What we should not miss, the technology that is relevant today will become irrelevant tomorrow. And therefore we have to create the mindset to be accepting the technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. He added a lot of spice to our deliberations this afternoon. And of course, he tried to re-emphasize our theme, which is, whether you need an educated person to be using plastic money, or you don't need that kind of an education. We'll have more on that a little later. But before that, let's have Mr. Arvind Passey, editor of the Education Post. His views, please. Yeah.
It's actually very difficult to speak after so many speakers have come out with. Can you hear me, please? Yes. Okay. After so many people have come out with theories and sparklers and all things wonderful. So I was wondering what demonetization really is. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? Yes, demonetization is a problem. Going cashless is a problem. If you actually look around, there are people who are talking of problems, associated problems. But then, I remember years back I had read a book by Richard Bach. I don't know whether people have heard of this guy or not, but Richard Bach, yeah. And one of the quotes in that book was, there is no problem that comes without a solution. So obviously a solution to every problem is there. It doesn't really matter whether you are illiterate or not. It doesn't really matter whether you are economically sound or not. It doesn't really matter whether you are powerful or not. The solution is the same for everybody. So anybody who says that it's difficult to adapt or to adopt credit card systems or debit cards, or understand what virtual money is all about, or to understand what Paytm is, or that everything is related to information technology, and that is something that the masses, the teeming masses, the people in villages are not going to understand. I believe it is not based on truth, and it is a bit of paranoia. And it's not good to be paranoid about anything. Now, you see, I'm reminded of a concept, and I think it was, one of the speakers, I forget who, did talk about attitudes and changes, right? So that was a moment when I thought, okay, there is a very good example in body language, and we have all heard of body language. You see, there are two ways you can change. One is you tell yourself that, I want to change. I want to become a confident man. I want to answer all the questions. I want to understand everything. I want to be humble, which is a very difficult route. The other way is through body language. So instead of, I'll give you just a couple of examples to prove my point. One is, if while talking, you're always having a finger raised, the experts in body language say that you are stubborn, you're not willing to learn, you're not willing to listen, you are not open. Now, see, one is you keep telling yourself, hey, listen, I want, and you keep doing this. I don't want to be stubborn, I don't want to, this will never happen. So, the guys who believe in body language, they say, force your hand, your fingers to open at the same time. And say, listen, I want to open up. I don't want to be stubborn. Now, I'm trying to relate this concept with how a concept like demonetization needs to be adapted and by the masses. So it is something similar to this. So obviously, what I am trying to get at is that physical action is what is going to change mental attitude. So I fully agree with the speaker who talked about it, except of course that probably those were complex terms and I'm using simpler terms. It is now how to communicate the concept of demonetization and a cashless system to the masses. Now that, I believe, can be done through both management systems as well as education, formal or otherwise. If it is formal education, then it has to be redefined. Formal education is not really opening up a book by NCERT and having a chapter on demonetization introduced in it, or adding another chapter on how to use Paytm. No, I don't mean that. That would not be the right solution. The right solution would always be something very dynamic. Not necessarily Nukkad Nataks, of course, but then, yes, the entire audiovisual media has to be roped in, the print media has to be roped in, informal conversations by opinion leaders, they have to be introduced. These are pragmatic solutions, and it is pragmatism that is going to help. So, and there was another time when I was wondering, when any change is there, what really happens? Is any change, when a change is introduced, is it the first mile that we are talking about, or is it the last mile? I believe it is the last mile always, because the last mile means that we are in the process of unlearning. And before you learn anything, it is unlearning that is important. The moment I thought of relating unlearning, so we need to unlearn. We need to unlearn how to keep more cash in the pocket. We need to unlearn how to be afraid of the internet. We need to unlearn how to say, I don't like smartphones. I'm from generation X or Y. That reminds me. We all, I wrote this down, we all need to have the body of generation X and the mind of generation Z. At least I have that. I'm quite proficient with technology, and there's no harm. I believe everybody sitting over here can be proficient in technology. I'm sure Monica would agree to that. After all, FWA is nothing but the introduction of technology in the garb of a new concept. Now, and because I knew I was sitting amongst academicians who are going to come out with very difficult terms from books which I've left reading years back. So I thought I'll come out with a formula. So the right formula, I mean not really the right formula, the formula that I believe could be the right formula is, I call it the mile formula. I was sitting here a few moments back, in the first session, and I noted it down. I call it the MILE formula. And MILE, according to me, is M is maintenance and not repair. Because what we always believe, and even when it comes to technology or concepts or economic concepts, is that, सब गड़बड़ हो जाएगा, उसके बाद we'll repair, we'll come out with something new and we'll do something. Maintenance is a concept that is an ongoing concept. So it's not that demonetization has been introduced. With demonetization, there has to be action on properties, there has to be action on gold, there has to be so many other actions. So you see, it's not that you leave everything at demonetization and then assume that everything will start going in the proper order. I is of course information technology, which as I said earlier, irrespective of what our economic, mental, educational status is, we really need to start adopting. And the penetration of mobile phones is anyway very high now. I believe the last figure that I got to understand was it was approximately 85% in India. And if it is 85% of mobile penetration, it is a very good sign. It does not necessarily have to be a smartphone. And sir, Paytm is actually a very foolproof thing. Social hacking, as you mentioned, is not possible. Because every time there is a transaction, you need to reactivate the password. And so without a password, even if I leave my mobile phone here, smartphone here, social hacking will not happen. Okay. So, L is literacy. I'm sure Mr. Braj Kishore Gupta will say literacy through Nukkad Nataks, but literacy, that is pragmatic. I don't, as I've already said, literacy is not introducing a chapter in an NCERT book. Literacy, that is pragmatic, and maybe Nukkad Nataks, but there could be other solutions as well. And E is enthusiasm in all ranks. So the moment we start decrying a concept, we are showing a lack of enthusiasm. I guess the first step is undiluted enthusiasm for a concept. So if it is not there, and if we are constantly coming out with theories, and coming out with concepts, and coming out with counterpoints, we are actually leaving a good concept dead, even before it is born. Demonetization and cashless, and the move towards cashless society has just taken a baby step. And it has to convert into a giant step, okay? So if you want to introduce Nukkad Nataks, fine enough. I don't have any objection to that. I guess this is all I want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really good. So he's very right. The cashless thrust by the government is only a baby step that we have taken. And as has been pointed out, that the world is changing and changes are happening at a faster pace at every passing of time. So we need to keep adapting ourselves very quickly. I'll share with you a small example. One of my colleagues at FORE School of Management, a professor, on 2nd of January, he came to me, or 1st of January, he came to me in the daytime, and he came and wished me Happy New Year. So I said, and no faculty does that. It's all non-electronic. If you chance to meet in person, there is a Happy New Year. Otherwise, you don't go to say wish Happy New Year. In IIMs also nobody does that. So he walked into my office, in my room, and wished me. I said, oh, thank you very much, but I think I wished you yesterday on the SMS and all, and I did that with everyone. And then when you send a good wishes to everyone, there's some faculty, almost all of them would respond back. Thank you very much, I too wish you a good time, a good happy new year. So he says that I did not respond back to you. I said, that's okay, I know that, that's fine, there are no issues with this. He says, no, actually I could not send you an SMS. I said, that's fine, phones sometimes don't work properly, so that's fine. He says, no, actually I cannot send SMS. I said, hang on, what did you say? He says, actually I cannot send SMS. I said, like what, your phone is not right? He said, no, the phone is all right, I'm not all right, I cannot type, So when he said that, what the question that ran into the back of my mind is like, I want to ask you, who recruited you here? We are in 2014, 13, and then you are saying, and you're a full professor teaching business school, where you have the technology, computers, email, everything, everywhere, use PPT and all that, and you say, I can't say that. So he is not with us now. So, so the point is, the lesson to me is that there are people whom apparently may appear quite savvy, but when it comes to actually doing micro things, they can't do it. And I'll give you another example. I'm from a school, high school, our batch, All India rank 1974, rank 3. Okay? Went to IIT Delhi, went to Cornell University, he did a PhD, he worked in the US in a research lab. Now he's back in India in the Chennai Mathematical Institute. He is a full professor there. Now we have a WhatsApp group, our school kids from Delhi school, we have a WhatsApp. So somebody said, and I told him, the Bala is here. He says, yeah, somebody get in touch with him. Finally somebody says that we have contacted him, we have talked to him on the phone. Now look at his background. He is rank 3 All India Higher Secondary, IIT Electrical Engineering, one of the topper types. He was like God to us. He goes to Cornell University, does his PhD, works there for umpteen years. Towards the last phase of his life, for family reasons, he says, I want to come back to India, goes to Chennai Mathematical Institute. Now our friends tell us that he is not on WhatsApp group, he doesn't want to be on WhatsApp group because he cannot type messages on WhatsApp group. I was in a state of shock that look, if people like him can respond like this, what happened to the people who are in the tribal areas and other domains? So that's a concern that we have. So we need to look at this entire change that is happening on cashless economy from the two perspectives. One is what is called the government's priority. The government wants a cashless economy primarily for economic reasons, the way I see it. When there is a, you should know, it is officially reported roughly 30 to 40% of businesses done in India do not pay tax. Okay, so when you do a cashless, which means the transactions through some digital format is tractable, so the tax would come. So if this were to happen, the government's revenue collection just because of this would go up by about 30 to 40%, which is a huge jump, right? So government is under pressure to do this, and then of course it becomes easy, comfortable, you're in sync with the current times. Take example of Sweden. Sweden is the first country to go cashless. You land at the airport and their advisory that you don't carry cash. So one thing which is missing in our entire e-cash format here is the cash card. It was there in the Western. In India, you get this cash card when you go for a foreign exchange for the bank. You're traveling abroad, you say I want to carry a digital cash. There is a cash card. So that is not available by and large in the normal domain, which means you have a card, like a credit card with a chip. I have one in my pocket. I want to show you. So you have a card and you put money there, you withdraw money there. So you go to a ATM-like machine, you put your card in, and you have a cash, you put the cash inside, or if it is linked to an ATM, you say, transfer 2,000 rupees from a bank account so and so into this cash card, it goes into the chip. And then use that card to do transaction wherever you want to go. So any of the vendor or business guy would have that e-cash thing. That's the only part which is missing here. So the government's priority is one thing. They have their own agenda. Now when the government says we want to eradicate corruption, it cannot be eradicated by this. Going by the current news of crores and crores of this new currency being seized and things, the corruption will not stop. Maybe the black money which was hoarded, a part of it would vanish. Reportedly 3.5 lakh crores would not be surrendered. So that's the recovery, but the corruption will happen. I'll give an example how corruption cannot be removed. There's a movie called Mars or something where the Arnold Schwarzenegger is the hero. So they have a colony on Mars. Okay? So all the people who are in that colony are brought by the NASA to that colony to habitate the Mars. So everything is sanitized. All the guys are filtered and they go to the Mars and they have a complete society there. And you know what? I'm talking of corruption. And then suddenly they have a killing happening somewhere. Some guy goes with the arms. And then somebody asks this question that how did these guys get arms? Well, you have your guys come with these arms, the local police, they have this for internal security and all that, and they would do it. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger goes to fix those criminal gangs running in Mars, where everything is electronic, right? So e-cash or anything will not stop corruption, so forget corruption. So therefore, the issue with us is how do we involve the people at large? When the government's priorities are there, we need to involve people. So therefore, this question that we want to e-cash, does it require higher education or formal education to be able to do this? Now you should know in the current time, the way technology is changing, if you have used, let's say, computers, just go back 30 years, you can't, you'll have a problem typing out a page, right? As a, you have to have the assistant. Now you do it yourself today, things have become very user-friendly. And iPad and iPhone came as a first electronic device without any user manual. The iPad, the kids start using it without being told. There's an experiment in Delhi in a slum area where the guy put a desktops in a slum area and cameras on, no instruction, nothing. The slum boys and girls came and they quickly learned on their own how to browse and how to pick up things and how to create an email account. I mean, they said, how could these guys learn how to create an email account? All they did was to go to a Hotmail or any of these websites, and the instructions were there. They could read and they start doing things. So people can learn if you provide the appropriate infrastructure. So the point is that we need to shift towards how do we make things so easy for people to do it that you don't need a formal education or any technical education to be able to do it. Now, for example, as you said that 85% phone penetration, a lot of people, the drivers have that simple phone, Nokia phones, they still carry on that phone. Now, they were not taught by anyone how to make a call, how to receive a call. Those guys send you messages. Drivers send me message, in English. He says I can barely read, but he knows few characters, late, L-A, he is signed L-A-T-E, send a message. In the morning he comes to pick me up at home. So if he's late, he just send an SMS, late 5. Means he'll be late by 5 minutes. And then I asked him, kahan se seekha hai? Oh, no, I just, drivers, I learned. You see? So we have to move towards that. It will take time. Organic growth, it propagates, it takes time. But then the question is that it is really doable in the short time frame, because people would get edgy and people get restless, right? So therefore that's the question. When we do need e-cash, we do, the people's contribution to that is, full of problems because you don't have that. So how do you look into this that, I would ask you, anyone, that that people's ability to adapt to e-cash, look at the country as a whole. So should we say that tribals can't adapt, Delhi guys can adapt, so therefore ban cash in Delhi, right, allow cash in tribal area? Something like that, I don't know. So any observation on this?
One example I just want to give. Almost a decade ago, when ICICI Bank penetrated into India, most of us were full of doubts and apprehensions. They were among the first who introduced this swiping machine and ATM. We had apprehensions, and at that time that was justified. But today you see the outcome. So change, as you have rightly been saying, is always resisted. And there is another concept called cultural lag in sociology. The pace of mental change and the physical change, there will always be a gap. And therefore, I would say, if something is done with the right intention, let us not jump to a conclusion. if it is a baby step, as my friend Mr. Arvind Passey has said, it is important to be focused on the positive aspects and substantiate it with the past example. One, ICIC. The second one, HDFC Bank of late is reaching out to villages of the country because it has been able to identify the gap. Unless and until we are able to reach out to the poor or the poorest of the poor who are not savvy and educated like us, no plan will be a success. That's it.
Yeah, actually, you see, on this, the adaptation of technology here for e-cash and all, a lot of questions being raised on the risk element, technological risk element, hacking and all that. I personally am not worried on this because you can never have a perfect situation where no hacking will be done. There will be no perfect situation, no money would be stolen, right? You need to, change, and the technology will keep adapting itself. When there is a cash, doesn't mean nobody is losing cash, right? You have a card, the famous saying is that have faith in God, but lock your card. Even if you lock your card, it is no guarantee your card will not be stolen. Right? So those technological improvements to prevent those kinds of thefts, e-cash thefts, would keep happening as and when these cases come up. So I'm not worried on this. You had something?
Yeah. Sorry, I have to catch the flight, so I will take the lead.
Oh, okay. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah.
So very quickly, two things. One is about baby steps, giant steps, and so on. But to me, these are not actually very well thought out steps to begin with. Because I have refrained from commenting on demonetization. I focused myself on virtual and plastic money. This whole cashless rhetoric which has come, this is a later development. This first speech of 8th November doesn't mention cashless. So it seems like an afterthought. And that is where, everybody is for enthusiasm, but enthusiasm for what? And I would also like to mention this, that as a polity we are becoming actually, our decision making is getting highly centralized. I am worried about that, because a country of our size, decision making has to be well thought out, and the decision makers have to be answerable to the people of the country and the parliament. I have worries on that count. I will not say anything more than that. A related issue which I would like to mention is that as a citizen I am very worried that we are becoming a punitive economy. This whole rhetoric of black money and let's go hunt them, I can bet that it will actually dampen business. Because you see, all business is not hanky-panky business, but it will actually also impact the genuine legitimate business. Because you see, for example, roads, if you realize, and there was a rumor, after demonetization, and in fact, news channels caught it, and to their eternal regret now, there will always be videos which will say how 2000 rupee note can be tracked by satellites and so on and so forth, if you have seen that. There is an issue there that should any sovereign state track my consumption? What is the limit of my consumption in private and public? Because I'm a human being, I have within certain kind of rights. If I'm not bothering you, my consumption is my own business. This whole idea that somebody can track all my consumption is worrisome for me. And right now, a related issue there is, all of us were talking about Paytm. Do you realize Paytm is just one service provider? Why are we not talking about MobiKwik? Why are we not talking about quick recharge? And how come, Paytm actually, how come Paytm is able to use whoever it is able to use in its advertisements? So there were competitors of Paytm who have actually filed a complaint. And I'm actually more and more, I mentioned Kabir in my earlier intervention, I'm getting older and I'm getting bewildered with the world. That is the only thing to do. You get bewildered. So on one hand, who in their right minds can actually create boundaries right now in this world in 2016? And we had this whole rhetoric that let's go after Chinese goods and so on and so forth. In Diwali, let's not use Chinese, whatever, lanterns and so on. It's rubbish. because the world economy is so interrelated, you can't boycott anything. At the same time, same people who actually spread this kind of rhetoric, they are not worried that actually Paytm is great deal of Chinese shareholding. You know, it's basically Jack Ma, you know, so it's his money into that. I'm not personally worried about, you know, data and so on. In fact, I'm all for Chinese company getting a level field as any company, because if India wants to go and work in China, same should be for Chinese company here. But is there somebody who is looking at these kind of concerns? So our way to plastic money, I think it has to be definitely well thought through. It can't be an afterthought that, you know, suddenly somebody needs a new slogan, so you go after a new slogan, so to say. And the way I look at it, it is definitely going to happen. But how fast, how soon, with what kind of safeguards, with what kind of, you know, safeguards for personal liberty in the country, that we need to think through.
I'll just add one very interesting thought that came. As a student in my first year, this is IIT Delhi, we were forced to read 3 books, humanities, right? Old Man and the Sea and New Brave World and 1984. Now, one was satire on Russian politics, one Old Man and the Sea is a general. Yeah. So there was a book on 1984, which was George Orwell, written 1965 or something. In that book, which is coming relevant today, in that book it says this world which he described would happen by 1984. And this guy says that the number of engineers that the society requires, the number of doctors society requires, the number of sweepers you require, you know, it classifies all of them, projected by time of the year, I mean time in the, you know, whatever. And so those babies are manufactured today. If you need X number of engineers in 30 years time now of this background, so the babies are manufactured today. So all the babies are in the shop floor, in the manufacturing unit, and there is no conjugal life there. You know, that's the world. And then the bottom line is that any of these guys, like for example, everybody is programmed. The sweeper is programmed. For a sweeper, the sweeping job is the best job in the world. This guy is extremely happy. You talk to him, would you like to earn more money and become a doctor or a manager or something? No, this is more satisfying. That's how the brain is programmed. But, you know, it's not perfect. Sometimes deviations do happen. If the sweeper starts looking into doing something which is not in this guy's domain, you know, wants to become a doctor or does something like that, he's breaking the law. And then there is a punitive action. Okay, penalties are imposed. And then the bottom line is, Big Brother is watching. So that I remember even today. So the Big Brother is watching because of the technology. So we have reached a time today where nothing is confidential. Okay, and I taught a course called Internet Marketing way back in 2000 in IIM Lucknow, 2000. Okay, when the internet had just come. The course was Internet Marketing. One of the theme was democracy through technology. There was a session on this. When you say democracy through technology, it means that everybody's view is available to everyone else, right? So all information is available. There is complete transparency into the system. So therefore, no secrecy is happening. So therefore, you're doing what is considered as a majority view, public good. So this is what is happening. So today, you cannot escape from privacy or confidentiality. If I have 100,000 pieces of 2,000 rupee note, it cannot be a secret, right? Somebody should know. If the law says that you can't find out, but there's some technology who will track it down, say, okay, you have this many notes, and the law says you cannot keep this much of note, then you're breaking the law. So now you go to our own, you know, Hindu mythology, where you have a Chandragupta. He has, you know, when the soul goes up there, and the Chandragupta looks at the profile of this guy, this soul, he kitane punya ka kaam kiya, kitana kharab kaam kiya, and accordingly he allocates this guy. You go to Swarga, you go to Nark or wherever, or you go back to earth, you know, whatever. Which in current times, you know, it is actually possible. And I saw a clip, you know, movie clip, in which this guy says, you've seen the pace of development in the last 10 years that we are all familiar with, right? Just 10 years. You have seen the pace of development last 100 years, last 10 years. Okay, just place yourself mentally. And now you project 1,000 years ahead. What kind of world would you be in at that point of time? So theoretically, 1,000 years from now, we may not be sitting like this, right? And we could still be having a meeting like this. Go back to the movie called Matrix. Have you seen that movie called Matrix? Right? So it's a virtual world. The entire thing is a virtual world. So today, guys like Tesla's CEO says that there is a 30% probability that we are actually in a virtual world. It's a simulation world. Right? Your Hindu mythology, Gita says is some maya hai. Right? So therefore, the point is that in the way the changes are happening, nothing is going to be secret. Today, somebody knows that is sitting in this hall because you have a mobile phone in your pocket. This guy, Gupta in US, the ISV is one of the founder, Rajat Gupta. He was convicted because of his telephone. Okay, so this is 5-6 years back. So the way things are changing, nothing can be secret. Today, there are companies in the US who are selling personal data on one individual on 800 variables. 800 variables on an individual is sold. US has a privacy law. Then this is being sold, right? India does not have a privacy law. You know what all is happening here? So therefore, we cannot have a secrecy. Forget it. Even if you have laws for secrecy, you cannot implement it. US, so much of democracy and law enforcement, 800 parameters, you can go and pay dollars and get the data. So therefore, it's a given thing. Change will happen. It will happen. If you adapt, it is easy for you. You don't adapt, it will be hard for you. That's the only thing. So we need to, as a government, we need to tell how do you make it easy for everyone. People have different levels of capacity. Someone is easy to adapt, someone is not easy to adapt. Two reasons. One is infrastructure, which is not in the individual's control, and individual's mindset. Okay? So the government should understand the two perspectives and take initiative. Yeah? So that was my view. And after him, we'll have a Q&A from the audience. Thank you.
I think formal education is not the answer. What is required is, what is needed is, in India we have around 60% of the population youth. If we activate the youth is mostly internet savvy, whether it is a village or interior or a city or a town, go to any part of the country, you will find today most of the youth is connected through that mobile or internet. So if you activate the youth in the country, I think that may solve the problems to some extent. The other thing which I think there is a need to take certain precautions. Like, when my card was hacked few years back, it took me 3 years, fighting with the enforcing authorities. 3 years. And when my mail ID was hacked 8 years back, it took me more than 2 years, and those culprits were arrested. And so reason being, our enforcing authorities, whether we have two main authorities in the country, one is at the CBI level, economic wing, another is the police level, economic wing, and whether it just go to any part of the country, you will find that taking years. Now, on the one side, we are bent upon. On the other side, we are not so serious about the enforcement aspect. And so what is required there also, like we have the very strong act in the country, IT Act 2000. But Section 66, it was struck down by Supreme Court. Nobody is raising voice. We cannot go against Supreme Court because it is contempt. But if had it been the USA or UK or in any other parts of the developed part of the world, the moment your card is hacked or your mail is hacked, just within few days, action is taken because the process is not so lengthy. And so what is required is, you have to ensure that the enforcement of the video, you don't have to have other law or rules or cyber laws or amend cyber laws. The present IT Act is so strong that if you enforce the IT Act in the country, I think that is also the need of the hour that is required.
The use of that QR code is anyway going to matter. So irrespective of whether you're using MobiKwik or A, B, C or Z, TM, it doesn't really matter. The transactions would follow the similar route. And there was a point some time back where illiteracy and difficulty in adopting technology was there. So I'd just like to say that technology companies are the prime runners in this race, and there are systems called NFC, for instance the near field communication, where you really don't have to understand or read anything, you just have to bang two phones and a transaction is made. And so, you see, we are anyway going to go very fast into this future, irrespective of what Alvin Toffler 20 years back said, that future shock is disorientation brought about by a premature arrival of the future.
Technology taking it to a level that I think I should pay Mr. Passey 100 rupee, it goes to you.
Oh yeah.
You think and it happens.
Yes.
You see, so they already have technology where they put a hat on your head with electrodes, and the guy who's paralyzed, no limb can move. Only thing that is moving is his brain, not even eye, right? And through brain he is able to control his wheelchair, which is electronic. Okay? It has already been experimented. That it says he thinks I should turn left, he turns left. It has been experimented actually. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
One point made by you, things don't change unless we make them happen. In this context, I would relate it to Professor Jha, Vidyanand Jha. He talked of two things. That center has no right to have a business to poke its nose into what we are doing.
Not center, any state.
Okay, any state. All right, any state. No, but your reference to the present state only, because we are talking in the context of India. No.
His observation was in general. Yeah.
Conference on
Oh.
global citizenship.
Wonderful, that's wonderful. So just to that point, I would agree in a country like India, force does help, number one. I'm in agreement to what you said, number one. Number two, what is very important, unless and until there is some enforcement, say for example traffic, let us ask the cops to go away. No, we have total freedom. True freedom lies in being controlled by society. At times it is true more in our country. That's it.
Just to add one thing, punitive word they used. In the US, you must have seen these cartoons. The mom tells the boy or girl, do your math properly and learn it. If not, then this Indian will take up the job in future for you. Right? Now why Indians are like that? Because we grew up, when we were kids, we were afraid of the slap from the teacher and slap from maybe parents for not studying well. So we were good students, we are doing well, right? Our next generation, our grandchildren now are into that pampered lot, right? You have to request, please study. Thoda sa padh lo beta. You see, so how much study will happen? God knows. The Western world has already seen that. So that's a good thing, because you have the 10th cutoff and 12th cutoff, which was the purpose behind 10+2 model here. But no cutoff happened. That means, you don't pursue studies beyond 10th if you don't have that capacity. Don't pursue studies beyond 12th if you don't have that capacity. That was the idea behind 10+2, which is there in the US. So there are lots of guys in the US who don't study beyond 10th. They don't study beyond 12th, right? They don't study beyond graduation. So if you are a graduate in US, it's a matter of pride. Oh, I am a BA psychology, a BA social science. What is the value of a BA social science in India? Nothing. But a BA social science in the US, oh, you are a graduate, oh, you went to the college, oh, my hat's off to you. See, because of 10+2. So we have, kind of skewed the entire thing in a way.
So what I just wanted to point out to you that this language I find very dated, and we are talking about Asia Pacific, so let me point out that this whole need for a strong punitive state, because we otherwise are very wayward people and we need to be kind of disciplined. This is what Indonesia tried in 60s, this is what South Korea tried in the 60s, and you see how those societies evolved. So definitely, and this is a larger matter of debate and observation, that economic growth was faster for some period, which seems to have run aground now, and therefore to attribute the reasons to the model of governance which they had may or may not be actually correct. Second is, it led to kleptocracy, and right now I just wanted to keep quiet and not actually wade into a controversy, because for some reason I'm actually meeting a whole lot of BJP people this month. So I'm always watching my word, and I'm glad that the state chief, whatever, is gone. But you see, do you ever ask that people who are talking about a corruption-free India, how did they run their election campaigns, which is in front of your eyes? Use of most expensive campaign in the Indian history's democracies. So where did that money come from? Okay, and if therefore, how do I trust people who are talking about all this with open kind of mind and open heart? So I'm just saying therefore that as an academic I'm trained to be a skeptic. I'm not a cheerleader, I thankfully didn't go to the army that I have to say yes sir. In fact, in army, when they brief you, they say koi shak, and people have shak shubha. So in 1962 war, Brigadier J.P. Dalvi wrote a book called the biggest blunder and India's biggest blunder and so on. But at that point everybody has to say no shak, no shubha and so on. Society requires all kind of people. It does not require only soldiers. And nation building is not only done by soldiers, nation building is done by everybody. So I don't trust any individual, no matter whether they come from Caltech and they can run great amount of mathematical models in their head, with running a country like India. Okay, and that is where what I am trying to tell you, that this whole model of disciplining, it's so 60s, and we should learn from those societies.
Not disciplining in the by force way. There are incentives of if you do this, then you are better off. If you don't do this, you're not better off. Those kind of models are there. But then it is historical that our generation were brought up in that model. Okay, the Western generation they modified a long time back. So I don't know.
Just a reference. There is an excellent book by this Chinese American woman called Amy Chua. That is called The Tiger Bomb, which brings out this, that how Asian kids in US, they follow different.
Entire Asia was into that kind of environment. So now they are becoming, Tiger Bomb. US is kind of going down. There was an interesting discussion on if you stop H-1B visa in the US, which the new president-elect is wanting to do, the IT industry would collapse in the US, because the IT industry is manned by Indians and the Chinese there, essentially. So anyway, that's a different matter. We had a question here. Yeah.
My question is, first of all, I pay my thanks to all elite groups that I learned so much about cashless society or plastic money. But my question is, today I'm enjoying one ad given by Delhi administration that their 6th standard student cannot read their textbook. So the percentage is 75%. Then my question to the panelist is, then what about unorganized sector which contributing a significant role in our Indian economy? It is only for some people just like JK Business School or my school or our learning institution, or general public as a whole.
There were experiments with mobile money with people who are not educated, so to say. And mobile money was actually taking off quite well. So I don't think that per se should be an issue.
See, because of the evolution of technology, as has been pointed out, it is moving towards instruction-less use. That means you don't need any instruction to use a electronic device. That's how things are being. And the first product was iPad kind of thing. No instruction manual, no nothing. You should know how to switch on. That's it. So if you don't know that, somebody will tell you how to switch on. And after you switch on, you're on your own. You keep doing things, you keep learning, and that's how. Yeah, sure.
See, typically, for example, if you look at how people use technology, the way we all learned using a Microsoft Word or Open Office or whatever, there will be some leader, a perceived leader within the group. So whenever there is a problem, I will go to him or her and say what to do now, how to send an email, how to save this document. And those socialistic groups get created on their own. See, nobody taught us India how to use a mobile phone. Nobody, in fact, if you look at the acceptance of television, or the rate at which television started being bought in the country went up after Doordarshan had lost its race, wasn't it? So when there were private players coming in, the content went so good that people found value. So it's a race of value against value. So even if I will give you just day before yesterday, I was with one of my colleagues. We were taking that route which was in Bombay called Dharavi, the 5-star rated slum. I don't know how many of you have actually gone into that. We were actually helping a global, a B2B company to procure from Dharavi. I would say majority of the chalas that they say in the asbestos chalas would have not only one dish, multiple dishes. See, who taught them how to use?
Dish is that
TV. The DTH kind of thing. Yeah. So people will find value. People will find value, and agreeing with Professor Jha, please leave us alone. See, the concept of black money, it's very interesting. I don't know how we came up with coloring money. If you go to Dubai, you will see that there is no difference between cash, check, all those things. Black money typically didn't happen because somebody hoarded cash. Black money happened because people transacted in cash, and the system was quote unquote was kept unaware. Right? Now, what kind of system is that if I hoard some 3,000 crore in my bedroom and the local income tax officer doesn't know? I don't know. You need a satellite to track that down? Had I been in any institute, I would have been said I'm inefficient. Right? So system inefficiency is then coming.
Yeah, so change will happen. We need to really change with the times, else you are left behind. And as we say in management, for a change to happen, there must be a critical mass for the society or the larger group to be influenced, right? So typically we say that you give a type 1 kind of a training to executives in this in an organization. Now somebody says that has that training impacted the organization? No, nothing. 10 guys getting trained, how does it impact those 10 guys in the organization? Nothing. But if 60% people get trained like that, oh yeah, it does make an impact and it is visible. So would 50% do an impact? I think so, yes, 50%. So what is the break point where you would say below that the impact is not visible, above that impact is visible, so others are wanting to get trained. Right? So typically, I don't know, he is a professor in that area, I am only a dabbler in this. A lot of, I'm sorry, they say that in an organizational dimension, the 30% people who get trained in a certain domain starts influencing the other 70%. Right? So therefore, what is the proportion of Indian population who should get into a e-cash, plastic cash, such that the remaining population starts feeling deprived? Right? There is a question that you need to think yourself. and find answers to this. Huh? Yeah, so you need to look at that. So for example, place like Delhi, you see lines outside ATM. I was telling someone, I went to the bank yesterday to operate a locker, right? A huge line. So it's the office locker, right? So 3 of us went there. The security guard, no, line. So then he says, oh, senior citizen, no senior citizen. Because one of our CEO had a lot of grey hairs and all that. So no senior citizen, go to operate the locker. So the guy didn't believe. So I pulled out because I'm an authorized guy, I pulled out my key, locker key. I said, this is a locker key. So he said, hang on. He called someone and then he looked at us and then we went in, did our job. So we had a bag and we kept the bag with files. Huh? So we went and kept it inside. Our driver was waiting outside. So he was at the gate just, whiling away his time. The car is parked elsewhere. When he came out, so I overheard some guy saying, oh, dekho, ye log abhi ke abhi chale aaye. So I said, I looked at him, I didn't respond. And then the driver says, sir, ये लोग ये भी कह रहे थे कि बैग लेके गए थे और खाली आता है. इन्होंने अपना कैश दे दिया वहाँ पे, नया नोट घर पहुँच जाएगा. So so I told our friends that why people in Delhi, place like Delhi, you need to line up for cash withdrawal. Maybe you could draw once, $1,000, $2,000. That's it. Today, sabji walas in Delhi are accepting cash. I mean e-cash everywhere. I mean, they know if they don't do it, they lose business. They are forced to do it. And we have umpteen innovative examples across the country how these chai walas and pan malas have adopted. There's a guy in Bangalore, no, not Bangalore, Hyderabad, someplace somewhere in Andhra South. But this guy says, you have tea in my stall, I give you Wi-Fi half an hour free. You must have seen the TV. And this is in the vicinity of college area. So suddenly his sales went up 4 times the next day. And then the TV interviewer asked him, कि ये कैसे किया आपने? कहता, I know the college boys keep going through this, and these guys always have short of money to top up the data pack. I know this. So I have given this. चाय तो पीते हैं और उनको सबको SMS करना होता है friends को, boyfriend, girlfriend, जो भी है, So they would buy chai from me, and I give. They can sit here. The moment they have pay the money to me for chai, 5 रुपए की चाय है, 5 रुपए में आधा घंटा Wi-Fi free. It's a big thing for them. Chai is free actually, and this is in terms of cost. It cost me maybe 10 paisa. He has a monthly pack from someone, and the password lapses in half an hour.
He's a wise man, sir.
Yeah, he's a wise man. So this is chai wala. He's illiterate. This guy is actually illiterate. So the innovation, creativity will come because of the situation which is now changing, and you have to adapt. So someone who gets to know this would want to adapt and copy him and to enhance the business. So that's the way to go forward, friends. I think it's 2:32 to 2:31. We have had very nice animated, spiced up discussions for about 1 hour 40 minutes. And I would like to thank all the eminent panelists who shared their wisdom and knowledge with you. And also thank you to all of you for being patient and getting involved, and some of the questions and observations that came. So thank you once again.
परिवर्तन ही प्रकृति का नियम है. So what is certain about change, that it will change. Sooner we adopt and accept this virtual and cashless society, I think we will move in the direction what we are looking for. And it will come only through a proper methodology and proper education. And we have to learn, we have to adapt, and we have to change. With this, we conclude the session. Thank you all. Thanks a lot once again. Please join us for the photograph.